Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. We are kicking off the season tomorrow. Training camp starts. It's going to be a lot of fun to see all of the new players that are going to be back on the field and, of course, see some turning players. I'm here with Todd Graffagnini, John DeShazier. I'm Erin Summers. Thank you guys for joining me. Todd, what are you looking forward to about just getting back out at camp in general?
Well, that's the thing, Erin. It's great to see both of you. And I was just talking to some of the media members after the press conferences today. I said, man, I can't believe we're going to be out there watching training camp. But you know what? It's time. It's been kind of a long off season. And it's, everybody loves football in these parts. And tomorrow's really the official first day. And I'm just really anxious to see everybody out there on the field. And, just listening to Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis a little while ago, it appears that we're going to see a lot of guys, and it doesn't appear that there's going to be a lot of attrition when you're talking about the injury situation. And I know everybody out there in Saints Nation is breathing a very big sigh of relief on that.
John, Todd said it. Feels good to be back. A lot of energy around the building, having the players back. What are you excited about just getting out there for the first time?
Excited about training camp?
Yeah.
No, never. No, Mike Thomas is going to be back full. That's the main thing, I believe, with this team, getting him back full practice, full go, first day of practice. So we'll see exactly what he's got. And if he's, he wouldn't be back out there if he wasn't the Michael Thomas that we're accustomed to seeing. So let's see if he can maintain that through training camp, because I thought there might be a ramp-up period, but he's going to go back at it full speed first day, so that's always great to hear. And, of course, we want to see what kind of shape Jimmy Graham's going to be in. He didn't play last season. He's a little dinged up toward, the end of his 11th season when he last played. And so we want to see what he might still have. A workout and looking good in the workout is a whole different thing than going out there and jogging around, even though they'll just be in jerseys and shorts for the first couple of days. When he puts the pads on next week, that's really going to be the tell. But, is he still the athletic Jimmy Graham that can get you a couple of touchdowns in the red zone? Because he was phenomenal from that aspect, even as he aged. So that probably will have to be his role here. But, seeing those two guys out there is going to be big.
You brought up a big word, health. Whether or not Michael Thomas is going to be ready to go, sounds like he is. Dennis Allen said it today. He feels like and expects that everybody should be able to participate in some capacity, which I think is great news considering, Trevor Penning was hurt at the end of this season. Cesar Ruiz is somebody, that line is going to be really important to get good reps, especially when the pads come on. Health-wise, any areas of concern? Who you watching, Todd?
No, I think that's really going to be the key word this training camp is guys on the field, getting reps. And, Dennis Allen talked about it also, Erin, that, they've kind of altered their schedule now, training camp-wise, to play towards the health, especially when you're talking about practicing in the heat. There are more days off a lot earlier in camp that we've seen in the past. I mean, you remember last year, we went, I think, 10 straight days without a day off. That's not going to be the case. First day off, again, first practice is on Wednesday. First day off is on Sunday. That was not the case a year ago. They went a lot more days in a row than that. So I think everything that you're going to see this training camp is based on keeping guys on the field. And, again, so far it appears that everyone is going to be out there in some capacity, which I don't think we could have said a year ago.
I'm not going to complain about taking some days inside in the indoor facility, especially with the heat that we are going to get. So I am happy about that. There are a couple areas, there are going to be some really interesting battles. We've heard Dennis Allen talk about the competition, how much he loves that and thinks it brings out the best in the team and the players. I think cornerback is going to be an interesting one. And DA said somebody has to step up. John, what are you expecting from Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo in that battle?
Honestly, and I could be totally wrong here, I think Alontae Taylor's going to be in the slot, and I think Adebo's going to be at the corner. I think you want to have your best guys on the field, and I think that's the easiest way to do it. I think Alontae's more capable of playing in the slot than Paulson Adebo. And we got to remember, a couple of years ago, Paulson Adebo, as a rookie, was fantastic at corner. He got hurt last year, which allowed Alontae Taylor to come in and show how good he can be. So both of them are really, really good, but I think Alontae Taylor is more adaptable to going inside. And if he's not, then you have that battle at the corner, and we'll see what happens. But I think getting them both on the field is the highest priority, because your slot plays as much as your starting corners now. It really doesn't matter a whole lot. You just want the guy who's able to adapt in there, and it's a totally different situation, whereas you're on the island and you're inside, and now you've got to know where everybody is and everybody's responsibilities. And I think Alontae Taylor did a lot of that here so far in the offseason and OTAs and minicamp. And so I think that's the way that they're probably looking to lean that way. I think you do that in those early parts to kind of get him adapted to it and get him accustomed to that spacing. So I think that's the way it's going to look right there. I'm really a lot more interested in seeing who's going to be the third linebacker. I think Zach Bond's ready to make maybe that Caden Ellis type jump, where he was a special teamer, he was hurt, and now he's ready to get into the rotation. This is his time. They need him, and he's got the athletic ability to do it. We got to remember he played defensive end in college, but he's had a couple of years to transition now, and so hopefully he's prepared for that, because this team needs him to do that. Now, I guess they could try to depend on somebody else, but I mean, there's a reason you draft a guy as high as you drafted him. You want him to play. You expect him to play. So I really want to see how that kind of shakes out at linebacker.
Been working with this guy long enough, it appears. You didn't completely steal my thunder, but I was thinking about linebacker. But you know what? Just to continue the thought, and we heard Dennis Allen and talk about it, Peyton Turner. I mean, who's going to be opposite Cam Jordan? Marcus Davenport went up north to Minnesota. Who is going to be that edge rusher on the line? It is Peyton Turner's time. You talk about his time. Yeah. It's his time. And it was good to hear that he's completed an entire offseason. We saw him out there during OTAs, didn't miss any practices. This is his time to show everyone why he was drafted in the first round, and that's to be a pass rusher. You know he's got the physical ability to do it. He just has not had the reps. He's not been on the field enough in his tenure with the Saints. Good offseason. Let's get it done in training camp and step up and get some sacks, because that's what he's here for.
And consistency is going to be key for him this year, definitely. You brought it up, tight end Jimmy Graham earlier, John, somebody that you covered. You've seen him here. What is he going to bring to this team? Why do you think that's the right choice? I
mean, I think at this point in his career, he really is probably more of a red zone threat than anything. The team has Jawan Johnson. They've got Foster Moreau. They've got Taysom Hill. So I think they've got their first three guys. But if you can get a guy who's 6'7", 265, and you get it to the 15-yard line, and you throw in a jump ball, and you put him in those situations, he has proven time and again in those 85 career touchdowns that he is capable of doing that. Now we got to see how he is physically. He took a year off, probably to mend a little bit, because he said he had some opportunities to play last year. He didn't take them, and he allows his body to heal, and hopefully he's not the Jimmy Graham that we remember, because that Jimmy Graham was a gazelle who could do everything. But this Jimmy Graham hopefully is a guy who can help you in the red zone, because, that's where this team is going to need some help. I mean, this team had a ton of trouble scoring last year. My goodness. And if you get Michael Thomas back, that helps a whole lot, because we just saw in game one last year the presence that Michael Thomas can have. But if you've got a Jimmy Graham too, when you add that to the red zone, now all of a sudden you're saying, okay, pick your poison, defense. Are you going to run after Michael Thomas? Are you going to run after Jimmy Graham? If Alvin Kamara's on the field, are you going to chase after him? Taysom Hill's on the field, are you going to chase after him? What are you going to be able to do? And if Jimmy Graham can add that element, I think that's where he is in his career right now. So hopefully he can stay healthy and provide that mentorship in the locker room, as they alluded to. But really, physically on the field, you get him in the red zone, I think he can still make a little hay.
And you're talking about Erin and JD, the tight end position in itself. I mean, it hasn't been a position of strength for this team in so many years. And I mean, you think about it, JD, probably the last tight end that was really featured in this offense was Ben Watson. I mean, that's going back.
Yeah.
That's going back a few years. But now with Jawan and Foster and now Jimmy Graham, you've got some options now, and those guys can play. And I just think you're going to see the tight end featured a lot more in this offense that we've seen the last couple of years.
And Jimmy, coming full circle, started his career here. If he doesn't get traded to Seattle, everybody knows Jimmy Graham would have Hall of Fame numbers.
I was going to say his number.
He'd be a Hall of Famer.
His number being retired here as well.
Yeah, he'd be a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt in my mind. If he plays 3-4 more seasons with Drew Brees, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He walks in. Now probably not as sure, but he was phenomenal in those 5 years.
Somebody that you didn't mention when you were listening to tight ends is Taysom Hill. How much are you going to be watching his usage, what they're doing with him?
I just think they're going to spread him around. Again, this is just my personal opinion. I think signing Jimmy Graham is going to maybe ease the burden on what Taysom Hill was going to do in the tight end room, because, look, Taysom Hill at his best is Taysom Hill doing a lot of things. And I think if you just concentrate on him at one position, that might be taking away one of his strengths as a football player in general. So, again, I have no inside knowledge. I'm just thinking bringing Jimmy Graham in not only helps the tight end room, but maybe eases what they want to do with Taysom as a tight end.
Running back Jamal Williams is somebody that brought so much energy the moment that he walked through the door. He's going to be somebody that's fun to watch, especially how they use him with Alvin Kamara. And then hopefully we'll get to see Kendre Miller a little bit. He's, the draft pick that's been injured, but seeing him back on the field. Any other players or position group that you're really excited or looking forward to watch them get out there?
Well, watch the offensive line. Trevor Penning is coming back from the injury. Cesar Ruiz is coming back from the injury. And Trey Turner was signed because he can still play. So if Ruiz isn't quite right, or if Andrus Peat gets hurt at guard, he can play either one of those positions. Also, he's played a little tackle in his career. But this team drafted Trevor Penning to start at left tackle. He needs to be healthy. He's got that mean streak in him that they like. He's got the physical ability, and we saw some flashes of it last year. He was probably on the verge of cracking the starting lineup when he got hurt. So him being healthy is critical, and you need that cohesion along the offensive line. Everybody on that line got hurt last year. Everybody. And so hopefully they can keep those guys healthy, because Ryan Ramczak's got a couple miles on him. Cesar Ruiz got hurt. Eric McCoy's gotten hurt, nicked up these last couple of seasons. Andrus Peat, unfortunately, has been injured each of the last 4 or 5 seasons. James Hurst at left tackle, or Trevor Penning. So they need that group to be healthy. They don't need each one of those guys missing 2-3 games apiece. Now, if you do, you've got Trey Turner to give you that depth. You've got James Hurst, hopefully, to give you that depth, because you want Trevor Penning to be starting. But they need that line to be healthy. And I'll be watching just to see if Trevor Penning is healthy, because it looked like he was right on the cusp of being hopefully what they want him to be. And I really want to see if he can pick up, if he's healthy enough.
Yeah, and he had 2, pretty fluke injuries. The first time he got hurt was in the last preseason game when the Saints went right down the field and scored a touchdown on a running play, and he got his foot kicked from behind. That kind of stuff doesn't happen, and he got hurt later in the year. So hopefully the fluke stuff is out of there. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch this crop of wide receivers going against the DBs in practice every day. That's going to be fun to watch, because, look, I don't think I'm stepping out of bounds and saying I think the defensive back group as a whole is probably the strength of this team. When you're talking about it, we never saw them on the field at the same time last year. One time, the starting lineup that they projected never took one snap a season ago. So those one-on-one, when they get into those drills, I think that's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. And I think, quietly the wide receiver group could be, I wouldn't say right now, because we haven't seen a practice yet, but I think it could advance during training camp and be a position of strength when it's all said and done, especially if everybody stays healthy.
Well, yeah, a healthy Mike Thomas makes Marshawn Lattimore better.
Correct.
And Marshawn probably needs to be pushed a little bit from time to time. And now you get a second year with Chris Olave, who looks like he's ready to bust out. And then he had a really good rookie season, but he looks like a Pro Bowl type receiver if you get him out there, and especially if you add a Mike Thomas out there. I think he's got it all in him.
Well, you saw the potential last year, Dave, JD, of what Olave could do, but there was no Mike Thomas to really take some of the pressure off of because he was pretty much forced into being the number one guy because, remember, Jarvis Landry got hurt also. So I think he had to do a whole lot more than he was expected to do his rookie year. And now that he's had that rookie year and he's been successful and had some productivity, the mindset is going to be completely different going into year two. And again, when Michael Thomas is out there, he's going to draw a lot of attention, and Olave should be very, very productive in one-on-one battles.
Well, and you factor in, if you got a healthy Mike Thomas and you got Chris Olave and now Rashid Shaheed can really do damage against somebody's third corner or something. I mean, it's a pretty filthy lineup if you can get them all out there and healthy at the same time.
What's the over/under on the amount of times we say health?
Yeah, I mean that's always the caveat. I mean that's just the way that. I mean, Mike hadn't played since 2019, basically, and that's a long time. And I mean, we know how productive he can be, but that's a long time in any sport. And you're talking about playing at the apex level of that sport and coming back and walking back on the field and being a dominant guy. A lot of times it just doesn't happen, so he's got to be healthy. I mean, it's been freakish stuff, and we know how hard he works, but he's got to be healthy.
He came into camp last year, though, and looked phenomenal. Training camp was great for him.
Well, he looked great in camp. He missed a couple. It's funny. I was just thinking about it when JD was talking. When we went up to Green Bay last year, he spoke on that Wednesday. He addressed, post practice after the second joint practice with the Packers. He talked to the media. It's like, this is great. And then we didn't see him again till opening day. So we're like, I wonder what happened to him. And then, of course, he had those 2 touchdowns against Atlanta, and everybody's all right. He's back. And then he wasn't. Yeah,
he won the season opener. Basically, he won the season opener. We saw the Michael Thomas presence and the Michael Thomas ability, and we saw him making the tough contested catches, all the things that this team needs. And then he gets the freakish injury, and it's like, geez, what else could happen to this guy? You feel for him because he's run through some buzzard's luck injury-wise.
We have made it almost 20 minutes, and we haven't talked about the quarterback situation in Derek Carr. Dennis Allen talked about how much comfort, confidence that gives you, just knowing it's somebody that's been out there, that's done it before. Seems like he's really taken to the team, the locker room, the playbook.
I don't know about you, JD. I think the fact that we went 20 minutes without mentioning it is a good thing.
A great thing.
You know what I'm saying? Because in the last couple of training camps since number 9 retired, that's all we've talked about. You had the first year battle with Jameis and Taysom, and then last year Jameis was the starter. And then, of course, during training camp, you're like, well, wow, Andy Dalton's actually doing okay, but, he's the backup. Well, little did we know he was not going to be the backup most of the year. But I think just having that presence of Carr back there, going through the full offseason program is just going to work wonders with this team. And that's something that, knocking on wood here, that we don't have to worry about as far as the quarterback position.
It's settled. His career has been a career of production and durability. And something I noticed in mini camp, and maybe I'm making too much of this, but Taysom Hill, who, wanted to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, the previous couple of seasons, and he sounded happy and not satisfied to be tight end, but he sounded calm and joyous. And, I can't say that was always the case with him, that he sounded that way. Now, maybe he was, but it didn't always sound like he was as accepting of the role and as accepting of the guy playing quarterback as he is now. I think a lot of things in that locker room have been settled.
No, and again, maybe just taking some of the pressure off Taysom anyway, because we wouldn't have known this while the season's going on, but there was always an outside chance, in the locker room and, in the meeting rooms, that Taysom was going to play quarterback. We just didn't know it until he went out on the field. So I think now that he realizes that he doesn't have to do that anymore is going to take a lot of pressure off of him, and he can focus on doing all the other stuff that he does.
We're going into year 2 now with head coach Dennis Allen. Expectations, are they different? Do you feel like this team is built for success taking the NFC South?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are expectations every year with this team, especially when you don't press the reset button completely and you don't rebuild. When you keep the roster pretty much intact and you add a quarterback you feel really good about, then the expectations are winning the division. And I don't think those are outlandish, especially when you've got a defense that played the way this team plays defense. If they can do that again, and you've got a quarterback you feel really good about, a quarterback who in his career historically has not given it to the other team, has been really productive, then if you've got that combination, a good quarterback who doesn't give it to the other team and a good defense that can keep the other team out of the end zone, you like your chances. You take your chances. So I feel pretty good about Dennis Allen in the second year. Looks like the roster is shaped the way he wants it. Looks like his coaching staff is shaped the way he wants it. And I think that kind of comfort level goes a long way with the head coach when he's got guys that he believes in and trusts as coaches and teachers on his staff.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that, saying I think
Why? Just because you think the Falcons are bums?
No, I wasn't going to say that. I was going the DA route. But yes, I would agree with that anyway. No, I just think there was a lot of maybe the previous regimes, maybe a little bit of the fingerprints from the previous regime last year. And just to kind of say what JD said, but not so eloquently, I think this is Dennis Allen's team this year, and I think his approach going into the offseason, we definitely saw some things differently out at OTAs, out at minicamp than we saw last year at this time. So just some, subtle changes as to how they were working, what the accessibility was, just little nuances like that. So, and as far as the division, I think obviously the division's up for grabs. You've got to set the expectation that you are going to win the division, that gets you in the tournament, and that's all that counts. You win the division, you host a home game going in the playoffs. That is the key. And then once you get in, anything can happen. So that's got to be the goal this year, and I don't think it changed from last year. Saints could have won the division last year, just health got in the way, obviously. Despite not really having an offense that scored a whole lot, you were in it till the last couple of weeks. And, even though you kind of knew that you weren't going to get into the tournament, the team itself played well down the stretch, despite the lack of offensive productivity. So I think the pieces are there. They've actually added some pieces, including the starting quarterback now. And it all starts tomorrow.
Loomis said they're still going to look at areas that they can improve.
Always
They're always going to do, yes, definitely. JD, you had a chance to talk to all the new coaches that came in, really revamped things on the defensive side of the ball. That is Dennis Allen's bread and butter. He has his staff in there that he really likes. Anything that stood out to you on how that side's going to function this upcoming season?
Well, I mean, it's DA's defense, and so that's the way it is, and it's been a really successful defense since he took it over after Rex Ryan. Really, he understands what he wants from guys and what guys' capabilities are, and he puts them in a good position to do it. And, we've seen the last couple of years where it's been a little rocky early in the season. They'll blow an assignment or two and, they'll give up a 50-yard touchdown, and, they'll kind of lock it down by game 5 or 6. Hopefully that won't happen this year. Hopefully it'll be locked down from the beginning because you need all those games. But his hands were all over it. Really, the thing that stands out the most to me was there was no change on the offensive coaching staff. Specifically, people were calling for Pete Carmichael's head, and Pete Carmichael's been a pretty good coach around here for a lot of years. So, he's earned the right to not say have a down year, but, he's gone through the process, too, of running through all those quarterbacks and trying to figure out who's able to do what and how to put guys in the right position. And all of a sudden you go into the season thinking this guy's going to be your quarterback, and 2-3 weeks in, that guy's your quarterback, and you got to cater things to his offensive abilities. So, I think this will be a good year, a good referendum for how good Pete Carmichael has been in the past.
You mentioned the slow starts defensively last year. Do you think it's going to be important maybe to quell that slow start to having 2 joint practices this year instead of 1? Last year you had the Packers. This year going out to L.A. with the Chargers and then the Texans. So, nobody's really taking a whole lot of stock in the preseason games anymore. Those joint practices the coaches love so much better. But you got 2 of them now. You think that would help maybe a slow start in the regular season?
The joint practices help. And trust me, have you been to the Chargers?
That was my first year out to Costa Mesa.
Look,
I can't wait.
They get cantankerous. Those 2 teams, when they get out there for those joint practices, I don't necessarily know that they like each other a whole lot. And it shows. And that's the real preseason game. You get those reps, and then you get to the actual preseason game. Yeah, but the joint practices are the real work. So I'm looking forward to those. And I guess I'm looking forward to the ones with the Texans. You don't really know what the Texans have. And so from that standpoint, it's a young team. They'll probably come in with a little chip because they want to prove a little something, and they want to make sure that, their head coach, D'Amico Ryans, understands that they want to be as physical as he wants them to be. So that one wouldn't surprise me if it got a little chippy too.
Interesting, too. All 3 preseason games are on a Sunday this year. I don't think that's ever happened.
No, it usually doesn't. You usually get a Friday one or a Saturday.
Game on too at that point.
The Texans game is I think the last game of the preseason, for all the teams, because it's that Sunday night.
Yeah.
It's starting off in the Dome Sunday at noon. Got to get kind of regular season feel against the Chiefs. Then we got the late Sunday afternoon out in L.A. 2 hours later here for the Chargers, which will be in SoFi Stadium, and then wrapping it up against the Texans.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun over the next few weeks. Do you have your notebook, your notes ready? Because I know how you chart all of the.
Yes, I do. So I was
play.
actually showing Mike Haas, who's the radio voice of the Saints, I have my notebook going back to 2019. So now we didn't cover training camp in 2020 because of COVID. I've got 3 training camps worth of plays and quotes in this notebook, and it is being retired today after the Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis press conference. So I will start a brand new notebook tomorrow. But if you want to go back in a like those time capsules, JD, you want to read some plays from practice number 20 in 2020, 2021, I got it right here.
See, you're making me feel real bad because I'm not nearly that organized when it comes to keeping up with practices.
I just keep it all up there in your head.
I just kind of fly off the cuff, and I got
stuff to write, man.
I got to
go back and see what they did.
You're making me feel real bad because
don't.
Because then I'm like, did that happen last Tuesday or was that Wednesday?
That's why I got it.
And go talk to Graff.
Man,
I got it.
That's impressive. One day, I shouldn't even tell that lie. I ain't gonna do it.
You ain't gonna do it. That's it. You've been doing it too long to switch now.
You can just go ask Graff how many kicks were made in practice because I know that's your favorite thing.
I will have it. Yeah, Will Lutz was. He missed 1 kick last year. I want to say he was 47 for 48.
Well, he's going to have to
written down,
be along those lines this year, hopefully.
I know it.
He's got a little competition.
That's the thing. It didn't translate to the regular season. So we gotta get him. We got to get him going.
Do you think that is going to be a big competition?
I don't.
I
think last year he's coming off the core injury, and I think he just had a couple of maybe snap hold kick operational things. I don't think it necessarily was him. That kick in London that didn't go was as impressive as you'll see, in terms of distance. And I mean, he said he hit it and he thought it was good. I mean, that was pretty phenomenal for a missed kick. And I just don't think Will Lutz is going to be that guy from last year again. He's been too accurate over his career. He's got a great leg, and I think he'll be back.
They have the Notre Dame kicker, Blake Grupe, that they brought in for a little bit of competition, but he's been the guy for a while. Thank you so much for joining me, Todd, JD. We will be back 3 times a week now for the duration.
It's time.
Saints podcast is going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, maybe Sunday this week, and then we will resume Monday, Wednesday, Friday scheduling for the rest of the season. So we look forward to having you all listening along with us, and we'll be bringing you all the coverage that you need as training camp kicks off tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.